Hi, and welcome to the Choose FI Foundation's Educational Speaker Series, where we take topics from the Choose FI Foundation's pre-K through 12 financial literacy curriculum and break it down with expert speakers in the area to bring a little bit more information and ideas to the topic. Hope you enjoy it.
Hi, everyone. This is Rob Phelan. I'm here with Cathleen Hutchins from cookingupfire.com, a finance and food blog, and you're also a patent examiner. So this is a unique situation for us. We've got a blogger coming on for the first time. So, Kathleen, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's really early in the morning for me.
Where are you?
I'm in Hawaii.
Okay, so we are on complete opposite sides of the U.S. because I'm on the East Coast. So yeah, we're 6 hour difference. Thank you so much for being on with us. Tell us a little bit about your blog.
So like you said, it's a food and finance blog. I started actually to discuss financial issues that I want my kids to learn. They're 3, almost 4, and 8 months old right now. And it just kind of springboarded. I started when my first son was just born. And I also wanted to keep track of my recipes because I do a lot of food that takes like less than a half an hour, costs about $2 or $3 per person. And this is $2 or $3 per person in a very high cost of living area in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is I just wanted a good record. I also had a cousin that kept asking me about finance things and I got tired of answering it for her. So I wrote a blog.
But yeah, I think that's how a lot of blogs get started. It's like, oh, I've got this information. People seem to keep asking about these things. So I'm considered at least a relative expert in my network. So I'm going to put these ideas down on digital paper and put it out there so people can access it and see it. It helps society, and it's a fun thing to do. It's a good way to kind of organize your own thoughts and keep records. So I love blogging. Someday I'm going to start my own. It'll happen.
It's extra work when you already have a full-time job and you're doing other things.
Is it a hobby or is it work?
Oh, it's definitely a hobby.
Okay. So you like doing it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that helps. Yeah. Hobbies are, that's the thing we do for fun. We make sure that it doesn't feel like a drag, doesn't feel like work, especially if it's not generating income. You want it to be something you enjoy doing. So like it can be a fun thing for people to do, and it can eventually generate income if that's something that you really are passionate about doing and want to do. So it can be a great side hustle eventually if you choose it to be. But we're here today to talk about weddings. So in this scheme of personal finance, we've been talking about relationships, we've been talking about things like return on investment, and we've kind of turned now into this idea of this big, massive financial and life event that's going to happen in a lot of people's lives. And for some people, it happens more than once, but weddings, why is it such a big conversation that we need to talk about?
I think they're massively overpriced. The societal pressure of spending so much money on a wedding. So we were just talking about this right before we started recording, that an average wedding is $33,000 and some change. $900? That's not some change, but that's equivalent. You can buy an Audi for that, a Mercedes.
The new Tesla model is around $30,000, right?
I think it's $34,000.
Yeah.
That's a down payment for a $150,000 house. Or like you said, it's a 4-year college degree.
Yeah, like at a low price college, or if you did 2 years community college and then 2 years at a 4-year, you could probably pay for your entire degree with that $33,000. So it's for one day. 33,000 for one day.
And that's the average. So there's a minimum you can pay.
Okay.
Right? Which is the fees you have to pay for the state as mandated for your marriage license or whatever they call it in your state. And then for the efficient, which could easily be adjusted to the piece. So $50, you're done.
Okay. So that's the low point.
That's the low point.
Okay.
But there is no upper limit.
No, and that was an average for, like across the US. And I know if you go somewhere like LA or New York City, the average is like much closer to 100,000 for an average wedding. So it's very relative to where you live. I'm sure like Hawaii, again, higher cost of living for a lot of different things. So probably the average cost of wedding is a little bit higher in Hawaii than maybe it would be in like the Midwest or something like that, where maybe the cost of living is cheaper.
Yes. So actually last year, thenot.com came out with an article, and it's really well broken down on the average. So this is now what everyone's quoting. So like New York Times is quoting the Knot as well. They have it broken down by averages for each state. So you can see, like you said, New York City, for example, or New York is much higher. It's twice as much as the average almost. I think the cheapest is Utah.
Okay.
Somewhere Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, about $19,000. I'd have to check.
Okay. So yeah, big difference depending on where in the country you live. And why do we want to talk about the cost of a wedding? Like what's the significance for this in a person's financial life?
So if you are planning on getting married, or you hope to get married soon, one day, I should say, not soon, because you're in your kids are in high school.
Hopefully you're in high school. Yeah, you're not thinking about marriage in the next year or two.
Eventually, you probably will get married, or you will attend a wedding. That's a lot of money to be putting down. So the New York Times article there, which I couldn't find online, it says, these are the costs, and this is how you pay for it. Okay. Why is the conversation not, why are you paying this much for it?
Now, when you say how you pay for it, like I'm assuming they're not just talking about, okay, save up and pay cash for this. What are they talking?
No, they're saying there are special loans you can get to pay for a wedding, or you can put it on your credit card. I just saw you cringe.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to have the video part on, but
sure am.
There are loans for weddings. This is not something that's mandatory. None of these costs are mandatory, minus the cost of getting the license that's required by the state and getting either a justice of the peace or a ordained minister that's legally allowed to marry you in that state. Everything else is optional.
So when we talk about getting loans for things, like we're talking usually about like an auto loan, a student loan, a mortgage. Like you get a loan because you're essentially trying to buy an asset. You're trying to buy something that will eventually make you wealthier in the long run. So a car, while it may go down in value, allows you to work. It allows you to do things that make money potentially. You get a student loan.
Donuts in the garage.
Yeah. You get a student loan, and it allows you to get a job that is potentially higher paying than if you didn't have the degree, and you eventually will earn back more than you put into the degree if you hopefully listen to our video about student loans and you didn't overpay for your degree. And then your mortgage, like you're talking about buying a house, a place that you're going to live potentially for long term, and that by putting equity into your home, so paying down the principal, you're essentially building up value, and eventually hopefully you own your own home and you get rid of that housing cost. So there is a point to it. Is there, like, this is almost a sensitive topic now. Is a wedding an investment?
No.
Same
way as buying a Louis Vuitton bag is not an investment.
Okay.
Right? It is an expression of your, usually if you're choosing it, of yourself.
Yeah, I would say my wife and I, we both wanted a wedding. We both had similar ideas of what we wanted our wedding to be in terms of size and I guess the look that we wanted it to have. She was very much on the creative side, so she did a lot of the design elements. She was the one who sourced a lot of the stuff for it. So yeah, she did probably more work than I did when it came to planning our wedding, but we were both involved in it. It definitely is. It's a long process. There's a lot of things to think about that you don't even realize come into the conversation when you're beginning. You're like, oh, let's get married. And you propose, and then you start planning, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much to plan for this thing. Like this one day, if you're going to make it this big event. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, I don't know, would we have made it as big an event as we did? But we also had a great day. We have really great memories from it. We have beautiful photographs from the day. So like for us, I guess there was some element of an investment that like we marked this as a very special day, a very special moment in our relationship, our marriage. And I don't know, would life be the same if we hadn't spent all that money for that wedding? I don't know.
So the way you're talking about it, it's very similar to a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Mm-hmm. So you have to ask yourself, would you put your financial security in the future, your ability to buy a house, for example, or your ability to pay off your student loans, should you have them, at risk for one once-in-a-lifetime trip?
It's a hard one. Now in hindsight, at 30 years old, we got married 4 years ago. I would probably be saying, you know what, we probably would have been fine with like a courthouse wedding and a party in our backyard. and you could have had your friends and family over that way. But at the time, I feel like it was a big statement for us as a couple that we were committing to each other. We were really going to celebrate this fact that we were going to be spending the rest of our lives together, and it felt like it was a big deal to have this party. And I don't know if that is the social pressure that comes with it, or if that is just our own values. And I say value is really important here, because like the once in a lifetime trip, like owning a luxury car, big house, whatever it is, if you value something, it's okay to spend money on it as long as you are not overspending on it and you're saying that, okay, there are other areas of my life that I'm not going to spend that much on because I value this particular thing. So I think we want to make sure that we're all keeping that in mind as well. Like, you don't have to just do a courthouse wedding.
Oh, no. I completely agree. Okay. This is something that you were going to remember, and hopefully very fondly, probably for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So what's a lifetime memory worth? I guess that's the question everybody's got to ask themselves, isn't it?
Right. But is it worth a down payment for a house, or putting yourself in debt for 20 years to pay it off?
Yeah. I mean, for us,
we spent at the time.
We spent $17,000 on our wedding, and thankfully we did not go into debt for our wedding. That was, one thing that I'm very proud of. And I think that's something that we were very adamant about, that like, we are going to have a fixed amount that we are willing to spend. We're not going to go over that. And we said 15,000 and we ended up at 17, but we didn't have to go into debt to do it. So we cut costs in other areas to make it happen. But yeah, going into debt for something like this, for a party, for a once in a lifetime, hopefully thing, it does seem like a very questionable thing to do, because when you borrow money, you're borrowing from tomorrow. Like, you're not saying, okay, this is today's money, like I can spend it, it's there. You're saying, I'm spending tomorrow's money. I'm gonna have to work for this, earn it, pay off the debt. And then all throughout that time, I haven't been able to invest or grow my net worth because I've been paying down this extra debt. So it is a big financial moment in a person's life. And the average age that most of us are making this decision is in our 20s. So like,
when you're stupid and you're like, oh, I have all this money, I have a job, I can do whatever I want.
The 20s, by the way, guys, are often referred to by older people as the lost decade. So
yes.
For most people, they go through their 20s, they start earning money, they make a lot of money, they buy a lot of things. And then when they hit their 30s, they start realizing, oh, you know what? I haven't really started thinking about the future at all. Maybe I should start doing that, but realizing that I had just lost the last 10 years where I potentially could have been doing that. And as we've realized from the series, compound interest is a huge thing, and time is the biggest factor when it comes to compound interest. So if you can start at 17, 18 versus 30 or 31, 32, like, you're going to have so much more wealth with so much less put into your accounts over time.
Honestly, if I had lived the way I live now, I would have been retired by now.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Right? If I like just got my first job and said, all right, 50% of my income is going into investment accounts before I even get used to having it. Like, yeah, this would be I probably wouldn't be having this conversation because I'd be living in Hawaii somewhere on a beach.
Yeah. Well, it took me a little bit to get back home, but I did anyway. But having an expensive wedding won't help get to your goals. Having a wedding that is the right size for you and has the main elements that you really want, that both you and your partner want, are the most important. Those are the things that are worth paying for. So, for example, Rob, you showed me your wedding budget.
Yeah, let's pull it up.
So you had it for 61 people?
Yes.
And you paid for a venue, which was, I imagine, was a beautiful place because it was a vineyard.
It was a lovely vineyard in like a rural part of Maryland. It's called Linganore Winery. And yeah, it was absolutely gorgeous.
And you had catering, of course, because that's now the expected norm to have lots of food. Mm-hmm. But I can't do the math in my head, which is funny because I have 2 engineering degrees. But the food per person seems rather high. Does that include... Oh, okay. You already have the alcohol in a separate line item.
It came to about $50 per person.
Okay. Which is not bad, because if you think about it, if you go to a restaurant that's a buffet, for example, and it's per person, that's usually about $50 a person already.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
I thought we did okay with our food. It didn't seem like we were super overpaying for it. And we got like 3 courses with like 2 options at each course. So like it was nice.
That's fancy. So let's flip this on the other way. Okay. Saying, okay, let's assume that this is a quote unquote frugal but absolutely awesome wedding.
Okay.
So had you chosen a more expensive venue?
Very easy to do.
You could have done that. You could have gotten something 50% or more expensive. And then had you chosen to have more than 61 people, even just keeping the menu at the same level, which was probably at the same quality of level as almost any other wedding you would be at, except for mine, you could have easily gone up to 200 guests, right? Mm-hmm. What would your budget have looked at like then? Just between increasing your cost of your venue because you chose somewhere fancier, this is pretty fancy already, and because you increased your number of guests.
And I'll throw out there, like, this was not the, like, so $2,000, actually $2,250 total for the venue. That was not even the ticket price for this venue. My wife was a little bit savvy. She was like, all right, I think we're going to get married at some point. I really like this vineyard.
Somewhere to work.
I like this vineyard. She's a psychotherapist. She was working in schools at the time. She's like, I want a summer job that I would really enjoy. I'm going to go work as a wine taster, a wine buff at this vineyard. And one of the perks was that if you held an event at that vineyard, it was 50%. So this was actually, half price for what the venue would have actually cost. So yeah, it was $2,250, but it could have very easily been closer to $5,000 had she not made that amazing move. But yeah, so you're talking like an extra $2,000, $2,500. If you increase the number of people, like even if you're just talking about what happens when you increase people, definitely your food costs are going up because every person is going to potentially eat a meal. So $50 per person that's coming would be roughly what it would be. Beer, wine, alcohol, whatever is a big factor for a lot of people's weddings. So for us, it wouldn't have changed the cost as much because we had what was called an open bar, which is where everybody who comes can basically have as much as they want, and it's just a fixed price per person. So it would have increased by $22 a person as opposed to depending on how much everybody consumed. Our cake would have had to be bigger, or we actually did a small cake and then we did cupcakes. So we did 1 cupcake per person.
Per person, right. Yep. Or you cut them smaller. We're like, you can have a cupcake.
Yes. You would have needed more tables, and each table would have needed a centerpiece and chairs and cutlery and all that stuff. If you're doing a wedding favor, so that is like a small gift that you give to each person who comes to the wedding, that would have been, an extra favor per person. Invites are an expense item on a budget as well for a wedding. You need more invites if you're going to invite more people. So yeah, there's a lot of things that come with having more people, and that's one of the biggest rocks when it comes to reducing the cost of a wedding is to reduce the number of guests.
Yes, and as mercenary as it sounds, I think that people who are getting married really should look at who they truly want at their wedding, because like you said, it's a special day that you want to remember for the rest of your life. Yeah. You have to think, are you inviting people that you are going to still be talking to in 10 years? Mm-hmm. Right? Is it your close family that you love? Just because they're family doesn't mean you have to invite them.
No, your second cousin doesn't need to be there if you haven't talked to them in 20 years.
Right, unless they're like your best friend and you're really good friends and you want to talk to them, do that. One of the tips that I have, that I did for my wedding, and it was kind of an accident, is you get a venue that has a limited number of seating. Mm-hmm. Now you're forced to keep the number of people you are allowed to invite down.
Yeah, and a hard thing about wedding numbers is it's almost harder to increase or decrease your numbers by like 5 people, 10 people, because what you find is that there's almost circles or bands of people that you invite. So you're like, I want my immediate family and like my closest friends. And that's like one layer. And then you're like, okay, well, let me open it up now to like my immediate extended family. So aunts, uncles, first cousins, whatever. And like suddenly that's not 5 people, that's 30 people. And then, okay.
And then you have the other side that's doing it as well.
Yeah. Or gosh forbid, like in Ireland, it's such a social norm that like your place of employment, like your coworkers will get invited, or the sports team you play on like gets invited, or your whole local parish gets invited. Like There's just so many different layers that it can exponentially grow so fast.
But in Ireland, do they have it where it's a full sit-down dinner with a black tie event?
It's still in like a hotel or some sort of like formal venue for like the meal part. And
Okay.
you usually have a church aspect as well. So like the church, like that's a cost that you don't see on my wedding here, because we got married and had the reception in the same location at the vineyard. But if you
We did too.
yeah, if you have a separate like church wedding, whatever religion, and then you move to a reception area, like you've got an additional cost there for renting that facility and then having an officiant or whatever goes with that. So like I know if a friend of mine had a church wedding and you had the priest, you had the altar servers, you had somebody who had to like set up the church ahead of time. So like there was a lot of other costs that went to other than just like, okay, what's the cost of the venue and the priest being there?
So here, the main factor of increasing costs is increasing complexity, right? So every time you're going, I need a full-on Catholic wedding, which my sister had, by the way, you have to pay the church. You have to give a donation. You have to go to all these mandatory meetings with the priest. Then if you have a full sit-down dinner, you have all the servers you have to pay. If you have a venue that you have to get catering to come in from, now you have to go get tables. You have to get linen service, just like you have separate beverage service. You have to have decorations. Every extra layer of complexity you add on, as with life, adds on more costs or more work for you.
So let's talk venue. Like, what is a way to reduce the cost of a venue?
Negotiation.
Okay.
So look at your wife. She goes, I really like this vineyard. I can imagine us getting married one day. Hint, hint. I'm going to go take a summer job because I'm flexible. I can do that. And they give you the discount, right? So she did that with the express purpose of getting a discount on a wedding.
Yep.
And I can't say I applied this, but why can't you ask what's the best price they can do it? Or is there another time that they can get, like a slow time that they can give you a discount?
Getting married on a weekday versus a weekend is typically a very different price point.
Correct.
The time of the year. So like a winter wedding in something like a winery, like where like, okay, it's not about
everything's cold as bejesus.
Yeah, it's not that's not their prime season for events. So they're like, okay, it's a slower season for us. We'll drop the price because we still want to have weddings, versus doing it in like early fall or late spring. Like those are the prime times for getting married. So like, I think it's March, April, May, and then September, October, November are like prime times for getting married. So if you're doing it on either ends of that, so in the dead of winter or the dead of summer, where it's either super cold or super hot, you can talk about getting reduced prices sometimes in these different locations.
Right. Right. And the time of the day, depending on the venue, might be cheaper than others. So the day that I wanted to get married, I was actually lucky because the venue is I should find the picture so you can see. It's a full-on garden with a restaurant attached to it that's in its own little valley looking over the Ko'olau Mountains in Hawaii. The daytime slot, you have it for pretty much from like 10 a.m. until I think 4 p.m.
Okay.
You have the entire grounds to yourself, which is great because then you have a private wedding, blah, 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 blah. You can pretend you're rich. But it was, I don't remember how much more it was to use the venue.
Okay.
So I got a discount because I went later on in the evening when they were open for dinner service. So we could only use half of the restaurant, which therefore limited what we could do and how many people we could have.
Gotcha.
But for me, things like having a DJ, I didn't care about.
Okay.
Having an open bar, I didn't care about. I didn't want people driving drunk home.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's expensive.
It is. As soon as you put the word wedding on something, guys, the price goes up.
Right. That's like a great point of one of my recommendations is just keep a low information diet, because as soon as you start researching wedding, the Knot's a specialized wedding website. They have, Vogue has their wedding issue. They show these beautiful gowns or $10,000. You start looking at that going, I want that. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I wanted that until I saw that. I spent $5,000 on my wedding in Hawaii. I had 50 people at it.
Okay.
So including airfare for us to get there was $7,000, give or take.
So we got the venue, we've covered the food. It's totally up to you guys with food. Again, one of those things that, is it going to be something that's really important to you or not? So like, what do you really want out of your wedding? Are you looking for a beautiful location? Are you looking for, the best live music and band because you want people to really dance and have fun, have that memorable night? Is the food really important to you, that like it's the best food that anyone's ever tasted, or is like, average food okay? Like, these are decisions you're going to have to make. And for us, like, food was like, it was like a mid-tier thing. It was like, we didn't want someone to come to our wedding and be like, oh, the food was terrible, but we didn't need them to walk away being like, that was the best meal I ever had either. And I think we hit the nail on the head. Like, we got the $50 per head, and it was good food. Actually, the comments we got afterwards were like, oh yeah, food was good. Band or the DJ was really good. Like, yeah, it was like, everything was positive. It wasn't like blow your mind away, but like, we had an amazing time. We have like great memories from it. So in terms of that, we hit that one on the head. But you talked about not having a DJ. So when you are doing your wedding, a lot of people kind of are faced with a couple of options. You can have, for music, you can have a DJ, you can have a live band, you can have a
excessively
person,
more expensive.
You can have a single person on a cello or a piano and who sings and plays. That's something you can do. Or you can have an iPod and a speaker. Mm-hmm. And I kind of dated myself with an iPod. You can have an iPhone and a speaker.
So those are all options. So let's talk about increasing, or let's go with the most expensive down to the least expensive. Usually the most expensive is the live band.
Yes.
Right? So depending on what style you want, that's the most expensive. Next is probably the MC/DJ, or you can have two separate MCs and DJs. One of my friends had that problem. Her mom said she had the DJ covered. Mm-hmm. And didn't tell her until the Friday before the wedding, which the wedding was on a Tuesday, by the way, that she got confused between a DJ and an MC.
So let's clarify. A DJ is the person in charge of the music. The MC is the person who is like kind of doing the official announcements for the reception. So they'll introduce the bride and groom. They'll announce like, okay, now it's time for the first dance or the whatever kind of events.
They're going to cut the cake, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, so we didn't have that. So there goes a layer of complexity already. So there goes another layer of cost, right? I didn't have to worry about sound system. I didn't have to worry about sound checks. I didn't have to worry about somebody coming to me every 10 minutes to be like, well, what about this? Or when do you want to do this? Or trying to tell me where to go, right? My most important thing when I got married was I wanted to be with people and I wanted to eat good food.
Mm-hmm. So the food was important, which...
Those were the most important things. And I wanted a fancy poofy dress. That's it.
God, we haven't even talked about what you wear yet.
Oh my gosh. And
before we move away from that, for my wedding, the MC, the DJ, and the officiant were all the same person. So we found somebody who was actually, it was a person who was like close to us, because when my wife and I went on our first date, we went into this particular restaurant where this guy, Ted Garber, was playing live, and we ended up like chatting with him, having this kind of fun night. And then it turned out that he was also a wedding officiant, and we're like, all right, this is perfect. So he officiated our wedding, and then he also did the MC and DJ, and did it at a very reasonable price for us. So again, a way to cut a cost here, guys, is to flex your network. Who do you know that has the skills that you need? And ideally, they're not somebody who you're planning to invite to the wedding, like to be part of it. So like, don't say like, oh, my best friend, like, will you DJ the wedding as well? Because you don't really want your best friend to be stuck managing music, maybe while you really want them to be enjoying the event as well.
Right. If you're gonna have a DJ. Actually, so I have a flip side for that.
Okay, go.
We had our photographer was my husband's boss, who used to be a professional photographer in the Caymans for weddings. So he actually came in the day before, and we went to a botanical garden, because we don't have enough gardens already at our wedding, and took photos, because we weren't allowed into the garden to take photos. So we actually went to a botanical garden and did that for free.
In full wedding getup?
Full wedding attire.
What?
Yeah.
You got a first look before the first look?
He went with me wedding dress shopping.
So yeah, don't be afraid to break these social norms, guys.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to like wait for this official first look. Like you can do your photos beforehand at a
Correct.
a different location. You can say it again.
You can do it afterwards, the next day.
Yep. Like it doesn't have to be all in the same time, and particularly like your wedding day can be a very long and stressful event. If you're trying to run around to get to photos for different things, like it adds just another layer of complexity and stress to a potential, like a day that should be really fun. If you can do the photos, like at least of the two of you on a different time, different place, go do it. It also means that you don't have to provide like entertainment for your guests for an hour while you're off doing photos immediately after your ceremony. So again, you shrink down the total amount of time and cost that goes into your wedding.
Mm-hmm. And you spend more time with your family and your loved ones that you hopefully loved enough to invite.
Yes, exactly. That's a good
Which
thought.
That's the whole point, right? This is an experience. But that being said, I think it's important if you do not have a friend that's willing to do this, that is a very good photographer, because terrible photos suck. My mom took a bunch of photos from our wedding and I was like, this is terrible.
You may as well not have a photographer if they're going to take bad photos, in my opinion.
Yes.
The videographer, I think we regret not having one afterwards, at least for like our first dance. But we did have friends like record the first dance, but we didn't get our ceremony recorded. And we chose to tell everybody, put your cell phones away. So that was kind of a choice for us. And I don't think we would trade it, but it would have been nice maybe to have like one up on a stand recording it or something like that. Just like think about these things ahead of time, like what's important to you, good photos. If they're important, make sure you get good photos. So a photographer knows what they're doing.
Right. Yes. Our officiant was a captain for a boat, who's one of my husband's friends, and he did our wedding for us. That was his wedding gift to us.
And that's something that is true, right? That a boat captain is allowed to be an official officiant.
Yes, official. Yes, and he would not do what I wanted. So that's a little bit of a detraction from having a friend doing this for you, because they don't always agree with your ideas.
Yeah, and also a friend who basically let you down on the day. It's hard. It's harder sometimes, guys, when you cross those lines, because like if they weren't a friend, you'd be like, all right, well, you didn't show, you're not getting paid, or like I want some sort of redress for this. Whereas when it's a friend, they were doing you a favor, like there's not much you can do about it, or say like the photos were terrible or something like that. Like you're not going to go to your friend and be like, these were terrible, I want a refund. So yeah, just be aware of that. Like there are pros and cons to using your network versus hiring professionals. Weigh it up. Like what are the things that are most important to you? Maybe hire professionals for those things that are least important. Use your network. Right.
And to that point, you could also have things that you don't need. Having 5 favors, not necessary.
No.
One favor. You don't even have to have a favor. It's just an expected norm.
Yeah, there's a lot of social norms that go into weddings, and you will get a lot of pressure from different people in your lives. So parents will have a view possibly on what they think a wedding should look like. Your parents might be different to your potential partner's parents. Friends will have views on weddings. You will have a view since childhood potentially of what a wedding should look like. You'll be influenced by social media. You'll be influenced by movies. Like there's a lot of different things that go into deciding what a wedding should look like. And just be aware of that. That you get to decide what your wedding looks like. There's very few like actual milestones you have to complete in a wedding besides like having the official documentation done and an officiant who actually is qualified to officiate a wedding. Like that's pretty much it. Everything else is kind of up for grabs in terms of what you want to do and what you want to leave out.
Yeah. So, again, like I said, that's a skill you need to learn, is how to say no to people that are saying, oh, can you just invite my hairdresser? No. I don't know them. No. And it's also being able to say no to yourself. Like, do I really need this pair of Jimmy Choos? Like, you don't need that. You just need comfortable shoes that look decent if you're going to show your feet. Okay, so let's get into dress, because we talked about that. Okay. We got guy's side. You got suits potentially. I guess there's some accessories you can have with it. Like you see people with like hats, cufflinks, flasks. Yeah, like there's some things you can do with that. On the woman's side, there can be a little bit more. I don't want to stereotype in any way, but I think there's more scope for things that you can add in versus what you can do for a guy's dress for a wedding day. So let's start with the guys.
Okay, so suit. Assuming you want to wear a suit, that's again still a social norm. Do you want to wear a suit? Do you want to just wear a shirt and tie? Do you want to wear like khaki shorts and like a Hawaiian shirt? I mean, whatever you want
Wash
to
your
wear.
face.
Yeah,
Wash your face. Brush your teeth. That's it.
Yeah, whatever you want to wear. It's all
Be fun.
it's good. Make sure you and your partner agree on it. If you agree on it, you're good to go. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. For me, I rented my groomsmen, so like they all had particular attire as well. So
I'm sorry. Like, you had paused between you rented your groomsmen.
Oh yeah, borrow those guys.
Oh yeah, they're
on
rental. Don't worry.
For my groomsmen, I had 4 of them, and I wanted them all to be in a particular type of suit. And I felt that if I was going to ask them to wear something specific, I wasn't going to ask them to pay for it. And that again is a norm in itself, like who pays for that sort of stuff. I decided I was going to cover it. So I rented from Men's Warehouse, and I went in, I said, okay, I'm going in 6 months in advance. Like I want these particular suits on this particular day, and negotiated down the price for it, which was awesome.
Negotiation.
And renting way cheaper than buying. So did that. And then for my own suit, I was like, okay, I think I should own one suit in my life that I will be able to wear to all of these different events. And a wedding is a good time for me to purchase this. So I again went into Men's Warehouse and said, okay, I'm going to be renting all of these things as well and purchasing. So I'm going to kind of bundle this stuff together. I want another kind of little discount on this. And I shopped for things that were in my price range. So I think for my one suit that I own, I spend probably maybe $200 on it. And that's a suit that I wore for my wedding, and I've worn it for many other events since then. So it's like, all right, this was, I'm not going to call it investment because it doesn't pay me back, but it was certainly something.
Cost per wear.
Yeah, it's like the cost per wear has gone down significantly because it's been worn multiple times. Versus if I got like a white, like ivory suit that could never be worn at any other event ever, that would have been like a one-time deal, and like then it's done.
Then you dye it. So to that point, yeah, go buy a suit if you're a suit wearing kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be gender specific, but I'll try not to be, but sometimes I do. Wear a suit. Do you need a tux? Probably not. Even for a formal wedding, if A-list stars can show up to a black tie event in jeans and a t-shirt, you can wear a regular suit to your own wedding and a tie, not a bow tie.
Yeah, nobody's going to turn you away from a black tie wedding if you're wearing a suit with a black tie versus a tux. Like you'll get away with it most of the time.
Right. So that's pretty easy. Shoes, make sure they're comfortable. They don't fall apart on you the day before when you're taking pictures.
Yep. And
guess how I know that?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we had to go buy my husband a Friday afternoon before the wedding, which was Saturday afternoon. We had to go buy my husband new shoes.
Oh. I bought shoes based on what I wear for work. So I'm a teacher. I wear black shoes and brown shoes, depending on what's going on. So I have one, I guess, nicer pair of shoes that are comfortable and a little bit dressier looking than an average sneaker. So sure. I just made sure, okay, these black shoes will be something I can wear to work as well. Done. And they were just new for my wedding.
Though that's probably not a great idea, though, just from comfort positioning.
Oh, like I wore them to break them in a little bit, but not like out and about or teaching kind of thing.
Okay. So guys, it's pretty easy, right?
Straightforward, I would say. Yeah.
Straightforward. So most of the wedding industry is geared towards the ladies. No surprise.
No.
So let's get into the two big costs, right? The dress and the engagement ring.
Uh-huh.
So the knot actually includes the engagement ring cost, does not include the honeymoon costs in that estimate.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. What's the guidelines these days? 2.5 times your monthly salary?
For the ring?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't make that much, sure, but
yeah. So there is that norm that goes into how much an engagement ring should cost, and then how much your wedding ring should cost as well. And you got to be prepared to say no to those. Like it's not, there's no like required amount that you have to spend on these things. Like you can give the other person a ring pop if that's what they want. Like it's completely up to you.
Did it.
I have friends, and at their wedding, it was really nice. They're both really musical, and her ring was made out of guitar strings. So like,
it's one of the carbon fiber type things.
Yeah, just really tightly woven guitar strings, and it probably cost them like, I don't know, $100 to get a custom made from like an Etsy store or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like going to a jeweler.
Oh yeah. So what matters is that it's comfortable and that you will wear it.
And it's the right size.
And it's the right size. That's part of the comfort thing.
Yeah.
But there's so many options for an engagement ring.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to buy it from a mall jeweler. You don't have to buy it custom made. I don't know how we're doing on time. You can buy it vintage engagement rings, right? You're saving the earth. It's got history and meaning behind it. And it's I can't say that word. It's a heck of a lot cheaper.
Yep. My wife's wedding band is an estate piece. So it was.
Oh, that's a good word. Estate.
Yeah. So
That's
it was, we don't know anything about who owned it previously, but it was a piece that had been sold back to the jewelry store. They weren't like going to tear it up and remake it. So there was like, this is a ring that already exists. We can resize it for you. But other than that, like, this is what you get. And it was beautiful. My wife loved it. And it was probably a quarter of the price of like getting the exact same ring made brand new. So definitely something you can look into. There are used rings out there. It depends.
We say estate.
Yes. Like there are lots of different rings out there. You will see them pop up on Craigslist, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, like for a variety of reasons. And it's totally up to you, like whether you hold superstitions, whether you have any qualms about, you know, having a used ring. Like that's really a personal decision. I hope that you question that, you know, in your head, like, why does it bother me? Or it doesn't bother me, let's do it. And then make sure you're not overspending for something like this. Like that's a great way to get a nicer looking ring for a much cheaper price. All right, so ring, you can do a lot to lower your costs on this, guys. So the size.
Be creative.
Yeah. If you are insisting on going to a jeweler, you know, the things that are going to matter are things like the clarity, the cut, and some other C word, color. The 4 C's, I think, when it comes to diamonds.
As long as it's sparkly, I don't care.
Yep. If it sparkles, it looks good. It doesn't really matter like how high quality it is. If you don't want to get a diamond, if you want to get like one of the synthetic stones that looks almost as good as a diamond, go for it.
You don't have to get diamond or diamond simulates. You can get other hard wearing things like sapphire. I don't recommend ruby or emerald for everyday wear because those break. They're spinels, so they're a lot more fragile.
And the whole wedding industry, guys, has been a case of a ton of advertising to get people to believe that you need to spend a lot of money on these things. Like that's how this whole industry survives, that like people feel like, oh, I have to spend a lot of money on jewelry or whatever it is to do it. All right, let's go to the dress. Okay,
for the dress. Guess how much my dress costed? $100.
Wow.
Right? It was brand new. It was an Ole Cassini. It had embroidery everywhere. It was poofy. It was not the exact design I thought I would like. But here's the key. Be flexible. Find something that looks good on you. Make sure it looks good on you. Make sure it's classic. The trendy nonsense, that's going to look horrible in 10 years.
Good advice, yeah.
Right?
And the classic stuff is also more plentiful in the used market, I would imagine, because it's classic. It's been around for longer.
Correct. So it has to fit you. So 2 key things is find something that's a little bit larger than what you need and then have it tailored down so it fits you nicely. Same thing with a men's suit. If you're not renting, if you're buying, find something that can get tailored to you. A tailored outfit looks so much better and looks so much more expensive than an off the rack that doesn't fit you properly. Even if you paid 2 or 3 or 4 times more.
That's it. A cheaper suit or dress that has been tailored will look better most times than a more expensive suit or dress that has not been tailored. So just be aware of that. And tailoring, guys, another service that you might need to look for, but shop around for. It doesn't have to be super expensive. And there are a lot of people with these skills that they can side hustle and do this for you on like for a negotiated rate.
Right. So I didn't even pay for tailoring.
Okay.
My grandma was professionally a seamstress before she retired. So she hemmed my she hemmed my dress. But I had it where the more expensive, the harder things to tailor, this is for the people that want to wear a dress, fit me nicely. So the bosom, waist, and I had a flared dress, so I didn't have to worry about the hips so much. Those are the harder things to tailor.
Okay.
So think about those things. Be flexible on what you like. What I did was I waited for David's Bridal to have their $99 sale. And I said, show me every single dress you have that will fit me. Also, don't look at the size because it'll shock you. I wore a size 14. I actually was a size 10.
Well, like
at
you
the
said,
time.
you want to buy bigger anyway because you want the space to tailor. So like you're looking
Right.
for that,
Don't,
and
yeah. You want the
don't
size
read too much
a
into it.
tailor.
Now, one thing you did say, David's Bridal. Now, this is different to like a private boutique. This is more of a like almost like a warehouse, like an outlet
Right.
center for wedding stuff. And they do have sales periodically. Watch out for those. And like buying a car, like buying a house, like going to a college, don't try on ones that are outside of your price range. Like,
Because you're full in love with it.
yeah, there's no point, and you end up like developing an emotional attachment, especially to things that are involved with weddings. Like there is an emotional attachment that comes with buying a house, with doing wedding stuff. And if you get emotionally attached to something that is out of your budget, it is much harder to say no. So the best course of action is to avoid trying those things out in the first place. Don't go see houses that are out of your price range. Don't try on dresses or suits that are out of your price range. So have that in your head, your budget for this particular item before you walk into the store.
Because before you tried it on, you didn't know you wanted it. You were perfectly fine in your life without it at that point until you tried it on. So I suggest trying on all of the dresses in your price range. There's obviously some things you can be like, I don't like this. The style's terrible. Like, you know, you probably didn't want a cummerbund. And you weren't going to wear a full tail. So you're like, I'm not going to try those on, right?
Yeah.
So same thing with the ladies' dresses or whoever wants to wear the dress. Try on as many as you can.
Different styles, different
styles, right.
sizes, shapes, that sort of thing. And then in your price range. Got it. Okay. So you figure out what looks good on you. So the one that we didn't talk about yet is just paying for the wedding. So we've got the cost down. We're trying to reduce as much as possible with all these kind of big pieces that we can control. So say you can get that $33,000 wedding down. You're still going to have to potentially pay for it. Now, most of you guys that are watching are probably going to be in your late teens. If the average age that people are getting married is like 27 to 29, you've got about 10 years to figure out a wedding. And my best advice to you would be don't wait until you get engaged to start saving for a wedding. And I know it sounds weird. It's like, why would I save for a wedding when I'm not engaged yet or haven't even started dating anybody yet? But if you're like, okay, this is going to be a big expense, probably sometime in my life because I want to get married, well, why not start putting $100 a month aside? And then when you do eventually find that person and you decide to get married, you're like, oh, we've got a budget to spend. We're not like, oh, we've got a year engagement to try and save up $15,000. So if you break down like even that $33,000 wedding, so let's just say like, okay, that's what I want. I want a wedding like that. If you were to break that down by a 10-year span, so it's 10 years for that wedding, that is $3,300 a year you would have to save, which is $278 a month. Now, let's say there's two of you in it. So like, there's going to be a partner in this eventually. So we're going to split that in half. You're talking $139 a month now for the next 10 years saved, not invested, just saved because you want to use it within the next 10 years, supposedly. So it shouldn't be in the market really. That's, you're talking $130 a month. That's a car payment, as we talked about at the beginning when we made a comparison. So like, do I want a car? Do I want a wedding? If I do want the wedding, that's fine. Just make sure you can pay for it as opposed to borrowing for it. Because as soon as you let other people help you pay for it, and this is one that we talked about beforehand, if parents start contributing money, which is what the social norm has been, that parents would contribute to a wedding.
Really? My parents didn't help, except for the cake.
I would say like tradition. If you want to go back like decades for traditions, like I guess the real tradition was what the bride's father paid or the bride's yeah. For I think by the time we got married, it was like, all right, well, if they want to contribute, awesome, but like we're not expecting it. Both parents said, we want to chip in something to your wedding. It's something that's important to us. We would like to put some money in. We're like, oh, great. And then you realize that it often comes with some strings. So like if they are contributing to the wedding and they say, oh, can I invite my best friend or like somebody who wasn't necessarily close to you, but it's close to them and like it's important for them. And you're like, well, well, now they've contributed money to this wedding. It's hard to say no. So just be aware of that. If you let other people come in with cash to pay for your wedding, it's going to potentially come with strings. So the more you can cover yourself, the better. And then the last part was the honeymoon. That is the part that a lot of people don't even think about. Like, oh, we've had this really expensive single day event. Now we want to go on vacation when potentially we're broke. A recommendation I have, what I do with my wedding, is to set up something like, it's called Honey Fund is what we used. And this is where you basically say, it's almost like a wedding registry. So registry is where, like, you say, these are the things that if you insist on buying me a gift, these are the things that we need. And for us, we just set up like different parts of our honeymoon. So we did a Mediterranean cruise. And so we had the flights, we had the cruise tickets, and you broke it down into small pieces. And if people wanted to give us a gift, we asked them to contribute to the Honey Fund. So to our honeymoon, because we were already living together, we already had an apartment. We didn't need a set of china plates or silverware or those things that can often come with weddings if you give people no direction on what to get. And
I got a lovely waterfall, living waterfall picture.
Wow. So yeah, you will find that guests would like to, or I guess social norm is the guest is typically going to try and give you a gift. If they want to do that, great. If you give them some direction in terms of registry, like so things you actually need, that's a great thing to do. Or if you want to let them help you pay for your honeymoon, you can do that. Some people will say cash gifts only, and it's up to you whether you think that's a little bit tacky to do or not.
It depends on the norm for your family.
Yeah, your culture, your family, whatever it is. It's very normal in some cultures. It's very abnormal in others. In Ireland, it's kind of odd to have a cash give only wedding. People insist on giving you like water for crystal. So a way around that is to, and it's a way of recouping some of your costs as well. So if you are going to go on a honeymoon and people want to give you a gift, like they can pay for part of that. And then you're kind of like, all right, that, I think for us, it was about $70 per head when you did food and drinks. You get a little bit of that back and kind of brings your cost to your wedding down as well. So just, it's a way of thinking about it that if it's right for you, awesome. If it's not, don't worry about it, but still try and figure out a way to reduce those costs.
The easiest way to reduce the cost is have less people.
Okay. Any other last advice before we finish up for today?
So one, find alternatives. You can DIY it, get sales, like you said, comparable but less expensive.
Okay.
Get used vintage or secondhand.
Yep.
2, be creative on what you are doing.
Okay.
Like you said, you made your own trellis. 3, learn how to say no, not just to your family, to yourself. You don't need all that stuff. 4, negotiate like you did. And then the other second point, the other part of that is you have to ask, do you really need this? So keep yourself on a low information diet. You won't want to buy stuff if you don't know you want it. Have less guests, cut out unnecessary things, be satisfied with nice rather than the top of the line and best of the best. And remember, it's your wedding, but it's also your life.
All fantastic advice. So that's it, guys. Weddings. You wouldn't have thought it probably before this conversation. There is a lot that goes into a wedding. My best advice to you would be before you start planning, sit down with your partner and list out what are the things that are most important to us about this wedding. And if it's things that don't necessarily cost money, if it's like, I want to have like my friends and family clothes, if I want to have a nice first dance, I want to be able to share like a private moment together, like during our wedding. So I want people to leave us alone for like 10 minutes. Like those are all things that don't cost money. Just like a budget, you prioritize the things that bring you the most value, the most joy. And then the other stuff you don't spend heavily on because it's not important to you. So best advice we can get between the two of us is like, just think about it, plan it. Don't let the wedding happen to you. You control the wedding and you control the aspects of it and make sure that it is what you want and it's at a price range that you can afford and you decided ahead of time that's what you wanted to spend. All right, Kathleen, thank you so much. How can people find more stuff that you write, or how can they get in contact with you if they have any questions?
Oh, thanks, Rob. They can find me at Cooking Up FIRE. So FIRE is part of the FI, the Financial Independence Retire Early. That's where I blog. Usually that's probably the best way to find me. Warning though, as we mentioned before, I do use some choice swear words. I'm trying to clean it up now since I probably want my kids to read this eventually.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.